Welcome to a brand new season of Finding the Frame. I'm delighted that for the first show back, I get to welcome someone whose work I've been following since 2012 and their film Looper. It's a cinematographer who's forged a formidable partnership with director Rian Johnson over 30 years with films such as Brick and Knives Out and The Last Jedi and Glass Onion, and now the third Benoit Blanc mystery, Wake Up Dead Man. It is my profound honor to welcome Steve Yedlin, ASC. Steve, welcome to Finding the Frame. So first of all, Steve, let's dive into your background. I'm really intrigued as to how you started in cinematography. What drew you to cinematography first? I believe you were a gaffer at one point doing low budget films. So what drew you
That's
into
right,
cinematography?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, even by the time I was doing that, I already wanted to be a cinematographer. I think, when I was, in middle school, is kind of when I first got interested, not just in liking movies, but, hey, how do these get made? Who actually makes them? What's the process of it? And, I remember the thing that really got me excited about that was, the visual effects in Back to the Future 2. It was just, I was just like, what is this? Who does this? How does this stuff come into existence? And, I'd already been excited about movies. Like I was a huge Star Wars fan when I was a kid, but that's kind of when it switched to not just liking the movie, but how do these things get made and getting curious about it. And that's kind of when I just started making homemade movies and bothered my parents to buy me a video camera and stuff. And, but I still had no real concept of division of labor. The the end credits of a movie were just gibberish to me. I didn't know what any of that meant. And I started in high school. I started um, I started volunteering on student films, just going there and just driving out to USC student films and working on those. And, even though they're student films and they're not a full production, they still have departments. Like there's a camera department and a production, and production designer and art department and a little bit of that division of labor. And at the time, I was kind of, once I saw that, I was like, ooh, I was drawn to the camera and that side of things. And it's sort of lucky. I think that. That really was a good choice for me because I think at the time I was more interested in just that the camera looked like a cool thing, which would never have sustained my interest. And now, you know, and now I'm a lot more interested in the actual visual storytelling. And I am still really glad that that was the department I was drawn to, but for a very different reason now.
I know you've talked about like your visual influences in terms of Back to the Future 2 and the VFX and stuff like that. Were there any sort of cinematographers that you were looking at whose work you really admired at that time, or was it
No,
was it more down the VFX side?
not yet. Not when I was not when I was very first understanding, um, you know, uh, what the departments even were.
Yeah.
I still didn't really have a concept of. I think I didn't really. I still didn't have a solid concept of what the artistry was of the different crafts. But very quickly after that, I did,
Yeah.
and within a year or two, and it was pretty early on. It was I mean, a bunch of things, but especially, Roger Deakins' work with the Coen brothers,
Yeah.
and, especially Barton Fink and, also, and also the pre, Deakins Coen brothers stuff that Barry Sonnenfeld
Oh
shot.
yeah. Oh, very cool. Yeah. Would you say that, like in terms of, I know that you've said in the past you're obsessed with the art and science of motion imaging and photographic lighting and things like that. Would you say that like being working through the gaffing and then going through the lighting department and things like that, would you say that that was what instilled in you that passion for it? You were seeing these different technical advances that were going on.
No, I think I was already excited about it before that. That was
Okay.
a little bit of a, and I was never a gaffer on anything other than like tiny, tiny stuff.
Yeah.
And but yeah, to go back to that sort of first time I ever volunteered on a student film, even before I started to, appreciate the artistry of all these great cinematographers and knowing their names and understanding the difference in the styles. I do remember the very first time I ever, um, you know, 'cause, because today we all have like phones that have cameras, and we're so used to you shoot something, you're seeing it right when you're shooting it. And at the time, everything was shot on film, and I mean, I had a video camera at home,
Yeah.
but I'm going to this student film, and I'm watching it shot on film, and I'm watching the film go through the camera and all that.
Yeah.
And then they invited me to their dailies, which, because it was a student film, was actually a class, with the other students and stuff. And I just remember thinking, "Oh my god, and this was just 16 millimeter film process and printed. They hadn't sat down and color graded it or anything." And just thinking, "Wow, it looks better than reality." Because this is the first time I was there when they shot it, and
Yeah.
now I'm seeing it completely photographically rendered, and I'm like, "Wow, it looks more beautiful than." I was there. I saw what it really looked like,
Yeah.
and that's something. Although a lot of what got me interested at that time is now totally not why I'm interested in it. That's one thing that kind of has survived, because I love that sort of artful color rendering, and where it's not, and it's something that I've not just made use of, but something that I've even sort of studied and developed my own tools for, which is how do we get this color and tonal rendering that's not, it's not colorimetrically or photometrically accurate, but it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you've done a lot of videos. I'm going to get into that a bit later on in the interview, actually. But there's a lot of videos. If you go on your website, you've got one that's debugging HDR, which is a fantastic one. It's about 2 hours long. Definitely worth a watch. For
Oh
anybody.
boy, I don't know about that.
It's interesting though, Steve, because it's one of those things where I don't come from a cinematography background. I've obviously worked for Shane Hurlbut at the website that we work on and stuff like that. So I've done lots of different things like that, and he's super technical and things like that. But it's something that, when you're trying to learn about the rendering process and going through the process, the post production and how color is added to the image and stuff like that. It's something that if you watch something like that, you really do break it down and make it simple, simplify it for us and talk
Oh wow,
about.
thank you.
So I'm grateful to that, and it's something, as I said, I'm going to get on later in this interview once we've set up everything like that. But yeah, definitely one of those videos to watch, guys, if you're interested. It's certainly one of those, and there's a few other ones as well. I think
Yeah.
it was Film 35 versus Ari Alexa video as well.
Yeah.
Cool one to watch.
Yeah, that one, it's sort of superficially film versus digital, but it's really more fundamental than that.
Mhm.
And that one's much more accessible. It's only 7 minutes long, and while it is a niche thing, it's not as totally niche and technical as the 2-hour crazy deep dive on HDR. And but that one's really about understanding the leverage point in our tools, because there's a lot of um, stuff that gets almost superstitiously attributed to the camera brand that's
Mhm.
actually, where those attributes actually come from the processing, that like, not what device is capturing the information, but what we do with the information.
Mhm.
And this sort of superficial film versus digital thing, which is pretty exhausting to me. But is it's really only an example of that, because there's also the other superstitions, like even digital to digital, or the people will say like, "Oh, this camera brand's getting better skin tones or something." You're like, it's not really the camera brand though; it's what you're doing with the information that the camera gets. It's not, it's
Mhm.
not the camera. So it's kind of, the idea of it is to you know, um, empower filmmakers to be able to use the real leverage points, of what they can do with this stuff, rather than sort of being stuck in the superstition that kind of falsely creates this brand allegiance based on a misconception.
Is that something that you've been working on? And it's something that you're sort of. I'm getting out of the interview now, just talking about this stuff because it is fascinating. Is that something that you're working on in terms of developing um, technology which can, you know, maximize the image, I suppose is the best way I can put it, once it
Um,
comes out of the camera.
well, well, I mean, the thing is, I sort of don't want to be another. Um, I want to empower people to do their own thing. I sort of actively don't want to be like, okay, they're going to take their superstition off of the camera brand and now put it on me, and I'm the
Mhm.
magic thing, because that's just doing the same thing again. Because the whole point is, uh, that you don't have to be, you can be an author rather than a shopper
Okay.
of, how this is the last little bit of finesse on the image, right? I mean, the real cinematography and the way the image looks like it is the lighting and the shot design, and
Yeah.
that's the real visual authorship. And this stuff is important, but it is like that last little finesse layer. But for that last finesse layer, which does matter, this is, I'm advocating for people to be um authors instead of shoppers. So I don't want to just be another like off the shelf brand that they shop for. That being said, I also understand that not everybody's going to do the insane deep dive, crazy tech stuff that I do. They're not going to necessarily write code and do all the data sets and
Yeah.
write the math and all that. I understand that people still are looking for um, some kind of a solution other than me saying that it's possible to do stuff. I've partnered with a colleague and friend, Colin Kelly, who has a Resolve plugin that's got all of his own color transformations in it, not my stuff. But then he licensed my like grain and halation
Yeah.
to put in there. So that is out there, for
I saw
example.
that when we do, was it Poker Face? It's got that kind of beautiful filmy look. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
And it was one of those questions I was going to ask you. Actually, I didn't actually put it in
mhm,
my questions, but you know, it looks filmier than film. I think somebody it was quoted as saying. You know what I mean?
right.
Was it one of those things where you were thinking, I'm going to shoot this on digital and make it look more sort of 1970s sort of filmy look, or what was that something you were planning from the beginning, or is that something?
I mean, yes, we knew we were gonna use the film emulation stuff,
Mm.
but the thing is, um, we didn't really do anything in the film emulation itself that's specifically 1970s. I mean, our references and our inspiration was, the original Columbo and, some other things of that time. But we weren't, but it was just how would we do something like that now? It
Mm.
wasn't, so even to the extent that we have film emulation, it's not 1970s film emulation. It's just contemporary film emulation, really. And I think some of the 1970s feel of it is the combo of, what we're doing with the lighting and just that the show itself actually feels like something that could have been in the 70s, just the style of the show. Even the script and the fact that it's not, the fact that the episodes are standalone and not because contemporary shows tend to be this ongoing long story, whereas the 1970s shows are somewhat of a reset. I mean, it also has a through line, Poker Face, but there's like that little thread that goes throughout. But overall, each one's individual, and then also just the titles, just the titles looking
They were very
uh,
cool.
very classic 1970s. So I think, yeah, I think it's a whole lot of things that that work together to create that impression rather than some one specific trick.
There will be those who'll ask the question, if you're gonna try and make something look like it's shot on film, why not just shoot it on film? Was and I'm
Mm,
gonna posit that to you, even
Yep.
though I can kind of come up with reasons
Mhm.
myself, but
Yeah. No,
feel
yeah,
free to.
people do have asked that many times and even phrased exactly that way. And the answer is that the word "just" there is doing a lot of heavy lifting,
Yeah.
because the thing is that there's a little bit of I think, a confusion between a developer and a user, right?
Mhm.
Like, like a software developer is not the same thing as a user. So it's a little bit like saying to somebody who, designs the iPhone, saying, why don't you just use Android?
Yeah,
Because they're developing something versus using something are two different things.
yeah.
And the what has gone into film being developed and coming into existence is thousands upon thousands of scientists, engineers, really smart people at labs, at Kodak, at Fuji, over 100 years.
Mhm.
And not only that, but for it even to work today, you still need some people working on your own movie, not just resting on the laurels of what people have done on the past, to set up a color pipeline that works.
Mhm.
Now, the director doesn't have to do that, but somebody does,
Yeah.
and the thing is, there's no less or more of that that has to happen with digital. When we're actually shooting, it's
Yeah.
actually less stuff that's going on to figure out the pipeline. So if you're not the person that does it, so if you're the director, or if you're a more hands-off DP as opposed to a hands-on DP like me,
Yeah.
you're not the one doing it. So there's no just because
Okay.
you're not doing it anyway, somebody else is,
Yeah.
and on my particular projects, I'm either completely doing it myself or largely doing it myself with help from other people. And I can tell you that in terms of the just, it's a lot less work to get exactly the look we want, from digital as opposed to film, because firstly, that's what I've been putting all of the effort into, where I already have stuff set up to
Yeah.
where when I start a new project, there's less, I want to spend the prep on that project, prepping that movie, right? Like in the past, when things were only photochemical and film, you wouldn't spend the prep of your movie inventing a print stock. Kodak does that, not the cinematographer. When you're prepping the movie, you have to
Yeah.
prep the movie. Like, what lights are we going to have on this day, and all that. So you don't want to be inventing things from scratch. And because of outside of specific projects, and over the years, I have all this stuff that I've already developed. When I go on to a new project, there's very little for me to do to get exactly that color and tonal rendering that I'm after with digital. Whereas with film, the film doesn't make it, especially now. In the past, when it was contact printed, there was
Mhm.
sort of this locked system that felt like the film had a specific look. But nobody does that. I mean, literally nobody. The one person, Chris Nolan, who has a few prints like that, does a few prints. Like, that's still, everybody else is seeing scanned neg.
Yeah.
So, negative already doesn't have the magic look. Film negative that goes in the camera is orange and flat and backwards. It's not the look of your movie. You need something to translate it. And in the past, that was a print stock with contact printing. But now, as soon as it gets scanned, you not only, with digital, you start with an uninterpreted camera original, and then you put it through some sort of process to get the photographic look. It could be the off-the-shelf one from the manufacturer, or it could be mine, or it could be that one that I mentioned that Cullen's got. But you need something that takes the uninterpreted data and prepares it for a look. And, with film, that used to be the contact printing. Now you scan it, and rather than that preparing it for a look, it's now doubly out of control, because you have one uninterpreted thing, the camera negative, being photographed by another uninterpreted thing, the scanner. And now you have to prepare that with a photographic look. So you've got multiple things that are out of control, and it's actually more effort to prep it to look correct. So, for example, on Last Jedi, we have both film and digital all throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Um,
And
in
you
our,
create a look to make them all look the same, right?
exactly. And the thing is, and that one's a great example of why it's not the word just, because
Yeah.
the one of those two that I did all the work for, that I did spend time in prep,
Mhm.
was for the film to look right, because I already had all this stuff for the digital. But for the film to look right, we had to lock down the scanner so that it wasn't changing scan settings roll to roll. We had to we had to replace the internal, because the scanner's got a LUT that goes from the sensor linear to the film log, and we had to change the scanner's LUT. Then we had to build the,
Yeah.
the show LUT for the digital that we already had for the film. So we had to do all of that work, and
Why
there's
did you,
another.
if you don't mind me asking, why did you go through that whole thing? Why did you not just shoot it all on, not just, forgive me for saying the word, just, right? Why didn't you shoot it on one camera and keep it at
Mhm.
one camera? Why did you change
Mm,
and go through different?
well, I mean, I would have if it was just up to me, but there was a lot of going on in terms of,
I can imagine.
everything from the franchise legacy to what the visual effects people wanted, what Ryan wanted. There was a lot of stuff, and I knew.
Yeah, a lot of masters.
Yeah, so I was like, well, if we need to check all these boxes, that's fine because I know how to. Because the whole point that I'm making here is the camera is not the leverage point. But if people sort of don't believe that or whatever, and I have to deal with it, I know that it's not the leverage point. So I was able to get the look I wanted from the different cameras, and it didn't matter to me other than the fact that, um, if they want me, they're, whatever, they're the ones paying for my time. If they want me to develop stuff that we don't necessarily need to develop because because that's what we're doing, that's fine. And that's what we did. And it turned out great. And as far as I'm concerned, like we got what we want out of it, what we wanted out of it. And, the camera wasn't the leverage point. The color pipeline was, just another funny example of the why don't you just misconception is the display prep demo itself, which is the name of that little 7-minute movie that I made
Yeah.
about film versus digital. Both of the images came out interchangeable, not identical, but interchangeable to where an audience next to each other, they may not look exactly the same, but if an audience is only going to see one or the other, they can't tell the difference.
Correct.
And but the film one had scratches that we had to paint out. We actually had scratches on the film, on one of the rolls.
Mm.
So there were a couple shots where we had to paint scratches out. So when you say the word "just," it was a lot more effort. There was a lot more just going on with the digital than with the film 'cause,
Why did
uh,
I mean, I will say, by the way, Last Jedi is the most beautiful looking Star Wars film, I think. As a Star Wars fan,
well,
so guys got Bantha next to him right there. Uh, definitely.
oh my god.
It I worked right, this is so I worked on something with Jon Favreau that was for down in Disney, just as part of the art department, and I'll be honest, getting to work amongst all the ships and put together,
Ah,
like, an M1 speeder and stuff it was like all my boyhood dreams come true, so I can only imagine, somebody like yourself who loved VFX when he was younger, to then work
yeah.
on a Star Wars film, and arguably, as I said, the best looking Star Wars film is
It was insane. I mean, I loved Star Wars so much when I was a kid, and I think I didn't even, like, sort of realize it, or my brain didn't unlock until recently, like, as a, fully well into adulthood, that I think one of the main reasons I got into cinema was actually John Williams. Like, I think about how magical that Star Wars music was to me, and also, Superman and, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, I mean, I think, yeah. Um, Even though I didn't understand it at the time, I mean, in hindsight, I think that, the John Williams may be the single biggest factor in my love of cinema.
I'd agree. Wholeheartedly. I could listen to his soundtracks back and forth, and they've just named the Hollywood Bowl stage after him, actually. So he
Oh, uh-huh.
got a thing just
That's
recently. 96 years old. I mean, he's still cracking on. I think he's doing the new Spielberg movie, actually. I think he's
Oh, yeah, yeah,
doing the
I saw
soundtrack
that.
to it.
That's exciting. I can't
Flying
wait.
Saucer, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Steve, talk me through, like, we'll go back now a little bit, but I was fascinated to learn about all the digital process that you were talking through them. But, you know, um, 30 years working with Rian Johnson, you formed this amazing partnership. I mean, it's one of the most longest running direct to DP relationships in contemporary cinema. I think we find 9 feature films you've done. Um, and talk me through how you two came to know each other. You were working in high school, you were working on student films, I believe, and he was at
Yes.
USC. So talk me through how you came to know each other, what you saw in each other as artists at that early stage, and when you became his DP, I suppose, and he became your director, and you ended up working together.
Yeah, so when I was, I met him when I was a senior in high school, and he was a freshman in college, and um it is on one of the student film sets that I was volunteering on, and he was doing the same. He was already at USC, but he was in general ed and hadn't started the film program yet, and, so he was doing the same thing, just volunteering on student film, and, yeah, we kind of saw each other, and, There's like sort of a bunch of stories in there, but the main one of just us getting to know each other part was, yeah, we had, those things shoot on the weekends since they're student films because they're going to classes during the week. So, we saw each other over these several weekends, but we kind of never really got to know each other. And then suddenly we sort of did at some point, and yeah, we kind of said, hey, let's stay in touch, and we ended up meeting back up and showing each other our films that we had made, and I would not have shown him my stupid film if he had shown me his first, because my like I was instantly realized how embarrassingly, I mean, I was a kid and it was very much a movie that a kid made, whereas his was like, oh my god, this is like a real movie. And yeah, and then we made a little short film together that summer on 16 millimeter. We drove up from Los Angeles to San Francisco and shot it in a weekend, and it's just a little chase scene called "Hey Lady, You Dropped Your Wallet," which I think is on. I think you can find on the internet, and it's also like a Easter egg extra on one of the Blu-rays and DVDs. It's either Brothers Bloom or Looper. I'm not sure
Oh, that's so cool.
which, but yeah, and
I'll link to it.
yeah, and yeah, and then yeah, and then all through film school, we would just we did make like an actual official student film together, like the intermediate um like project that you have to do, which at the time was like a 7 or 8 minute black and white 16 millimeter film that you had to do, and we did that together for the program, but we also would just, the bigger thing is we would just kind of make these disposable movies just for fun to hone the craft, like on the weekends. So me and Ryan and some of the other people in the cinema dorm that we lived in, sometimes on a Friday night, I'd say, hey, do you want to shoot something this weekend? And we'd kind of shoot it and edit it. And, by Sunday night, we would have our lame version of it's been edited and sound mixed, and we have a thing. But they were just these kind of disposable things where we're like just making movies to practice and to make movies. And yeah, so we've been doing it since then. And, I loved Ryan's stuff so much. In my mind, I was kind of like, I would just be lucky to get to work with Ryan, no matter what he does, whether it's big or small in my life. And then somehow I got lucky enough that he keeps bringing me along for some reason. So
I mean, it seems fascinating. How would you say that your creative shorthand as a DP and director has evolved over time? Obviously, from those early days, what was it? Hey, lady, you drop your wallet, thesaurus thief, and all that kind of stuff, and how you've developed over time. How would you say that that creative shorthand's developed?
yeah, yeah, there hasn't been any sort of large break point. I don't think it's, it always feels like just, working with Ryan always feels like that comfort of family, but there's certainly been an evolution of just sort of things getting, better and better. I mean, Ryan was always brilliant at shot design, and he's gotten only better at it. And, his confidence too of, you know, he's really a master at, he really knows cinema. He really knows the cinema language. He really knows, what, he's really confident in what he wants, but he's also really confident at sort of, this is where what I know as a know what I want as a director ends at this level of specificity. And then beyond that, he doesn't micromanage me at all. He trusts me to make that a reality sort of the best way possible. He's not like showing me references saying it better look like this or something. I mean, it's just, so he'll have these sort of, you know, um, big specific ideas, and it's up to me to make them a reality. And that goes from, things, all the way back to Brick. Like in Brick, there's the Pin character has this basement lair,
Yeah.
and it's got a really low ceiling. And Ryan wanted this kind of, when Brendan's standing in the middle, he wanted this like kind of ugly fluorescent light right over him, and he wanted these lights next to the pin on the walls so that it's kind of bright in his face. So he knew exactly sort of the idea of what he wants, but he's also and then he communicates that to me on a conceptual level, and then I execute it and he lets me do it, which is just beautiful because I know that, luckily I haven't personally dealt with this too much, but I know it's like out in the world there's relationships where it's kind of the opposite, where on the one hand the director doesn't have a clear idea but
Yeah.
of their own part, but then they're micromanaging the DP on their part.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of perfect. So all the way from Brick to, like Wake Up Dead Man is the kind of the same thing, but on a much bigger scale, where he has all the very specific stuff. Like in Wake Up Dead Man, we have all these light changes where, like, within the church and also the rectory and stuff, where you feel within the scene that the cloud goes in front of the sun, and then the
Mm.
sun comes back out of the clouds. And he had really specific stuff that he wanted. Here, there's one scene where the big God rays come out, or there's another scene
Yeah.
where, as Judd's giving this swelling speech about faith, that the sun is, coming up out of the clouds behind him and flares the lens. And, that's kind of the same thing where Ryan's got the concept. He's very confident about it. There's no sort of indecision, negotiation.
Yeah.
He knows exactly that he wants that, but he's also not micromanaging me, or yeah, he doesn't go beyond his part of the specificity, and kind of lets me and the crew and everybody kind of figure out how to do that the best way possible without any kind of sort of logistical shackles.
I get that. Do you think that that's the value with staying loyal to like a one director? I know that you've done lots of other
Mm,
done music videos, you've done
mm.
lots of ads and things like that, but like staying loyal to that director for features, and like I'm thinking like you've got like Linus Sandgren's working with Emerald Fennell and Noah Baumbach, and I think Denny Villeneuve this year, so he's worked with lots of different directors, and presumably has to change it some ways process to suit that director and the way they work. Do you think that there's a lot more value in your relationship with Ryan and the fact that it's developed over 3 decades?
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, but I'm just also purely lucky that he keeps bringing me along, and he's the and that he's the absolute best at this stuff. But I really enjoy the other styles too, like the last two non-Ryan. Obviously I do fewer non-Ryan movies now than I used to,
Mm.
just because of schedule. But I do fewer in between his movies. But like the last two that I did were both with directors that I loved. And it's a very different working style, but that's fine. Like, I like doing different working
Yeah.
styles. To
Future
me,
tours.
yeah, and to me, like I don't mind what it is. It's like fun to do it differently, and to adapt to somebody's style. To me, the only thing I wouldn't want is that sort of incommensurate thing I was talking about, where if somebody doesn't have an idea, but then is also micromanaging you. Like whatever level of specificity they want to go up to, no matter how vague or specific,
Mm.
whatever it is, they know what they want up to their part, and then they let me do my part, and mutual respect, and
Yeah.
like any version of that, I'm great with. I don't, yeah, I love all of it.
Mm. So talk me through your process then, having said that, like when from I suppose from the moment you get approached with a script, let's say it's Ryan
Mhm.
Johnson or somebody comes to you with a script, what do you do? How do you approach how you do your job? Are you somebody who reads the script multiple times, makes notes on it as to how you think that the camera might move, etc.? Talk me through it. Talk through what your process is.
I mean, it is really different with different directors. I
Mhm.
mean, specifically with Ryan. Um, the thing that's different than most other directors that I've worked with, and as you said, I've probably worked with fewer other directors than you, because I've been busy with Ryan.
Mhm.
But the level to which he already knows and is confident about what he wants,
Yeah.
means that I get a lot more prep to actually make that the best reality possible. Because the fact that somebody does something a different way doesn't mean that the prep schedule is longer.
Mhm.
You know, so if it's more of a way, and I totally enjoy this too, but if it's more of a way where, like, I'm sitting down with the director and we're figuring out shots together and all that, that's super fun, and I love it. But it just also means we're not really as clearly decided as soon. So there's going to be some things that we didn't really have the as much of a clear idea about until even if we started it 6 weeks out. We don't know this particular thing until 1 week out
Mhm.
or something. So that particular scene is not going to have, necessarily, and we'll try to do it, obviously we'll try to do it where scenes that are easier to logistically implement, you plan those ones last so that you
Mhm.
do, the ones that are more complicated, you've figured out earlier, but there still is a little bit of a level of, just it's, um, like how fun and enjoyable it is equal, but sort of how the prep time gets used isn't exactly equal.
I get you. So then let's bring it to the Benoit Blanc trilogy, I suppose.
Mhm.
This is your third one. So like, how are you massaging those three distinct visual styles? Are you looking for something that's got visual continuity throughout the three, or are you trying to sort of give each one a different identity? I suppose like that's one of my questions.
Mhm.
I know you've got like Knives Out. You've got this sort of autumnal, woody, sort of New England mansion kind of
Mhm.
mystery, and then Glass Onions in the Mediterranean. It's all Sundays tempting, and then this super modern sort of building with the Mona Lisa in it, and then finally Wake Up Dead Man takes us into this sort of Gothic church.
Mhm.
So talk me through it. What would you say?
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Wake Up Dead Man is a lot got that gothic and, deeply contrasty, look to a lot of it. But the thing is, like, the way Ryan and I approach it is, it's we're really just trying to tell the story the best visual way possible, like the most powerful visuals that theatrically bring to life this particular story. So
Mhm.
on the one hand, we don't want it to be boring, we want it to be really rich and
So it
evocative,
wasn't
and
boring.
but on the other hand, we're not trying to we're not trying to show off with it. All that stuff is there, for the to underscore and heighten, the story, and it's hard enough to figure out how to do that without sort of putting artificial rules on yourself. Like, it has to be the same as the other movie, or it has to be different than the other movie,
Yeah.
and so really, and also Ryan is very. Um, deliberate that he doesn't want to repeat himself or rest on his laurels. These are different movies than each other. They're not even really sequels, because it's just like Agatha Christie, where it's
Correct.
just another Hercule Poirot book and you can read them in different orders. And so he really, he doesn't want to repeat himself. He wants to push things to the next level each time. So it's hard enough to figure out how to do that without putting rules on yourself. So I think that using the same principles, like we're using the same working style,
Yeah.
we're obviously gonna automatically have even with the same working style, we're gonna have a totally different look if we're successful at supporting the story, because this is a totally different story. This
Mhm.
is a much more gothic story that even has horror type elements, like with the crypt scene and with the
Correct.
flashback scene, and stuff. So if we actually work to support this story, it's automatically going to have a very different look than the other movies. But then also, because it's us doing it, and it's also the similar thing with the ensemble cast, and a lot of times with people in the same rooms and some of the same um, puzzles to solve, it's also automatically going to have some aspect of it that is reminiscent of
Mhm.
the other movie. So it kind of feels like if we put all our effort into, we're neither trying to make it look the same nor different. We're just trying to do the best job we can on this thing.
I get you.
And then if you do that successfully, it just is going to look totally different, because it's a totally different story that's much more gothic and all of this. And then it's also going to have some recognizable elements, simply because it's got that ensemble cast and the same sort of, some of the same character dynamics.
Are you looking to push boundaries or to find new challenges every new movie of these ones? Are you trying to go, oh yeah, what if we did this, or what if we did that, or what if we use different, like you've talked about the lighting, which we're going to get into as well, which is all these different ways that lighting changes throughout the scene and stuff, which sounds like a challenge in itself. Is that something you're looking for when you're taking on a new Benoit Blanc mystery, I suppose?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and any movie, not just not just Benoit Blanc. I mean, I kind of always, hope to push it to a next level, if we can. And what's awesome, you know, specifically with Ryan is, he wants to do that too. And so he's giving me these challenges, like if it's sort of not baked into the story and the fabric of the thing at a core level, if you super add it, it might not be right for the movie. So the fact that that's what was built into this thing was all these like really rich different lighting scenarios, all the ones that change within the scene, but then ones that change across scenes where we've got, you know, overcast, sunny, day, night, dusk, dawn, early morning, sun rays. We have just all of these different things, you know, and in all of the locations, but also you have all of those different scenarios, even within just the main church set.
Mhm. That church set definitely stood out to me because you had this like there was I think there was a scene between the two Joshes, Josh
Mhm.
Brolin and Josh O'Connor, like where one had the stained glass window over his shoulder, looking down and all beautiful and colourful and everything, and it's in this sort of very grey sort of stone church. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
every time you're cutting back and forth, you've got this kind of real kind of deep greyness, and then you've got this beautiful colour thing. I don't know. It reminded me of Network. You know that bit in Network where he's preaching, he's got that bit behind him with those.
Oh yeah.
I had that sort of sense in my mind when I was watching it. But so and I think when I was actually watching it, I wrote down Windows right from the very beginning. Because at the beginning you've got Josh. I suppose anybody could write that about any film, but with Josh O'Connor, he's what a stupid thing to write. All these other journalists are always writing good things, but he's sitting bathed in this light, almost like blowing out, I suppose, when he's sitting in front of it, and it's this is a guy who's full of faith and everything like that. So at the very beginning, and then we see it clouding as we go through and stuff like that. Was that something you were trying to do? You were using lighting as that motif?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that set, by the way, and I told Rick Heinrichs, our production designer, this. That's my favorite set that I've ever shot in. I
Oh,
mean, what
that's
he
cool.
did with that set, it's so beautiful and nuanced, and it's really evocative of everything about the story. And then logistically for us, what he gave us so that we could do all those different lighting cues and different feels and all that, and obviously what he did was so magnificent that like kind of the stuff that I worked with him and his team on, um, it was all sort of little finesse things. We weren't asking for any. I mean, he just made that magnificent thing, and that, you know, no substantial input from us. So, all the stuff
Mhm.
that we were working with them on was, logistical things like how are we going to place it in the stage? Like we need more room on the side where the sun's coming in than on the other side, and things like that. And one of those things was figuring out the windows because there was a we wanted it, we want to get a sense of what's out there. Like if the whole thing had been stained glass, which was discussed at some point, you wouldn't get a sense of all these different times of day, and then not only that, but if you do have sun coming through or something, you could end up with really weird, ugly colors, right? Because if you have stained glass if some of it's red and some of it's blue, you're going to get like an ugly purple on people, or whatever. So we ended up with this amazing sort of perfect combo of huge windows that are mostly clear, but they're sort of like rippled and obscured just enough that you're not like clearly looking out. With these beautiful backings that I also want to talk more about later, outside the windows that have all the evocative tree and sky and all that, and then you have the stained glass at the top. Also at the back of the church, the windows are full stained glass, but with the big tall ones on the side, just the top is stained glass. So you always get that color, and you can have it in the shot, but it's not. But the light that's coming through isn't all going through there and making everything into a weird, because when you only when the window's not in, yeah, because when the window's not in the shot and you only see the person, you're gonna see the sum of whatever that happens to be of the
Mhm.
stained glass, and it could end up being a really ugly, splotchy color. Even if the stained glass is beautiful to look at it directly, it could the sum of the different colors in it, whatever they sum up into a single color, could end up being really ugly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we kind of had the best of all worlds where we didn't have to deal with that problem. We've got these beautiful windows that are great for lighting and for seeing the evocative stuff out the window, but they're kind of rippled just enough that, the fact that we're looking at a backing and not the real world is fuddled a little. You still have the color of the stained glass, and then the windows in the back that are never a main source of illumination. Those ones could be full stained glass.
And now you got it on like a DMX board for when you're changing the way the light changes throughout the scene, or what was?
Yeah, so we have custom software
Mhm.
actually that um, we're actually working on me and a partner are actually working on something that eventually is going to be um, a publicly available product, but right now is kind of a Frankenstein prototype. But
I love it.
so it's kind of our own software, and the way I do it, because I mean, I'm a weird nerd, is I'm actually doing a lot of the stuff myself rather than the lighting programmer. I mean, the lighting programmer still has a ton of work to do, but in terms of what's actually happening at the moment of finessing the lighting, I've got the control of both the nuance of the light, the color, the intensity, all of that, plus the timing of the cues and everything. And I really like doing, like, I know that most people probably wouldn't want to do that because they don't want to be thinking about that, they want somebody else to do it because they want to think about other things or whatever. But, to me, the sort of operational part is easy enough that it doesn't take up the brain power. I can go directly to the result rather than the method of the
It's
result.
amazing.
So it allows me to finesse right up until the last minute, and every little thing, like, the exact key to fill ratio, or if we've got, if the sky is steely blue compared to the warm sun, I'm finessing exactly the warm versus cool, and these kind of things, and we can do it right up, till the last minute. So, whereas, when stuff was all physical, before the LEDs and everything, obviously you wouldn't even be able to change something without, like, somebody's got to get up on a ladder and put a scrim in the
Put a
light or
gel on
something.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, which obviously you couldn't be doing after you've called ready and the actors have arrived. But even beyond that, even in the normal, the more contemporary version, if it's I have to tell the gaffer something, the gaffer tells the lighting programmer, then there's an interpretation step because we're using descriptive terms, not it's not like a technical physical amount.
Yeah.
Then you have to see whether that result is what you thought, whereas here I can just be doing these tiny little finesse things. I can do it right up to the last minute, like, so, like, even, there's some times where, for example, we get it, pretty, we get it almost there with the stand-ins, and then I say to the AD, okay, when we get first team here, when we get the movie stars here, I just need like 15 seconds of them just on their mark, and I'm just gonna do that last little extra bit of finesse. And they say okay, and I nominally get that time, except the whole time they're like, looking away from the director or something, and then I never actually get it. But then on those times, then, like, they do the slate, and literally right when the slate comes down, I just do that really fast, do that last little
Wow.
finesse bit, and
Oh, that's cool. So are you doing that on like an iPad, or is like an app that you designed, or
no,
is
it's
it like
well,
an actual piece of?
no, it's I mean, it's, it's a computer. I have like, I have a workstation on a cart that's got,
Yeah.
it's got a big, nice monitor so I can see focus really well and everything. And then it's also got a screen that's the GUI for all the light control stuff. And it also has the camera control stuff on it too, where I can change the white balance or the rear ND filters and stuff just from the same computer that's controlling the lights.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
A couple of other things in Wake Up Dead Man that I especially like, while we're on the subject of lighting, that really kind of struck me. One of them was I love the Andrew Scott sci-fi writer house where he's got all those post-its on his
Yeah.
windows. I
Yeah.
thought that was a beautiful way of creating a stained glass window with, post-its, which was lovely. But
Yeah.
the other one that I really would love you to dive into was, outside Wix's mausoleum grave, whatever you want to call it. It's a rainy night, very kind of Conrad Hall, Road to Perdition, this rainy night and everything, and you've got this long sort of Epping forest that seems to go on forever. Oh, is that a backdrop, or are you actually shooting into a forest there? And
No, we were actually I think there's like one or two shots that are composites. But like, there's a close up of Judd that we, with the rain coming on him, that we shot on a stage. But yeah, basically, but most of it was in the real forest, there, and, yeah, that I mean, that one is another great example of, Ryan knowing exactly what he wants, and it's really heightened and theatrical, and it's not just that he knows what he wants, like, in prep, I mean, it's baked into the script even, the thing where it's really dark, and then the camera light comes on because there's the motion detection camera
Probably a
that has the
security
light
light
on
or
it.
something, innit? Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes on, and it just even though in the world of the movie, it's not super bright, it feels like it's super bright because it's so dark out there and it's the brightest thing.
Mhm.
And, that again, that was the kind of thing where this is so designed and confident by Ryan that, like, again, in prep, we don't have to spend any time like, it's not like I'm pitching ideas to him and there's indecision and, it's like we already know this is what it is. But then he also trusts me to figure out how to do it,
Yeah.
and then, so I've kind of got my work cut out for me where we can, use the prep time to really, for me and the gaffer Dave Smith to sit down and figure out how to make this thing the best it can be. So instead of sort of using the time to figure out what it even is, and then only at the end are you finessing it into the best it can be, we're actually using the whole time to finesse it into the best it can be because of Ryan being so clear and confident in what he's after.
Yeah. You've also got in that scene, I believe you got people with lanterns and stuff. And what have you got in that lantern? Is there like a sort of an aperture, sort of one of those discs or something, or what's in?
It was different with different ones.
Okay.
Some of them we were just stuck with whatever the lantern really was,
Hmm.
but some of them, Dave Smith's fixtures foreman, was able to actually, I mean, none of the lanterns had movie lights in them, but there were some where he was able to take the off the shelf light out and put one in that was brighter and more of a color that we
So you
wanted it to
can't
be.
affect that at all. That's just how it is.
Um,
I wondered if that was
some
something that you could actually control with your tech.
Usually I could control, I can't remember. There might have been some that I could turn on and off with
Mhm.
from my system.
Gotcha.
I can't remember. But one thing that we could control that was fantastic and, um, we've been doing this for a few years now and, because it's been a while now. When I first started, in cinema, it was not normal, it was, smartphones weren't a thing,
No.
and now it's so ubiquitous, so whenever you have a contemporary movie, there's scenes with people holding phones and tablets and all of that, and I used to get really frustrated about, like, what the color and brightness coming off of it, and
Mhm.
there's very little control over it. I mean, the best you can do is try to um, go into the settings and change you can change the overall brightness. And, I mean, now, like, more recently, there's things like, like Apple has a night shift where you could go in but it's hard to, it's still frustrating. So, but now for a couple of years with the system that we've got, we put all the phones and tablets on the system too. So I can actually, like, if somebody's holding a phone, I can actually change the brightness and color remotely from my station.
That's cool.
So, so we can actually get it to so we kind of started at we might kind of start it at something real, like, okay, this is like sort of the normal white point of a screen. And then, for example, if you're in a incandescently lit room that's warm colored, you might want the screen to be cool to get that sense of it's cool versus the warm, but that might be too much, right?
Mhm.
Like the real coolness might be too much. You got to tone it down, um, a lot of these screens are going to be magenta, like their sort of white point out of the box is going to be magenta compared to all of our lights. So if all of our lights look nice, it's going to look too magenta, or if it looks right, all of our lights are going to look green. So it's easy to just dial the magenta out of it or whatever. And I'm not looking at the phone, I'm looking at the monitor
Yeah.
where I can see exactly how it's actually coming out. And I've got it on like like a gentle knob where I'm turning it in small increments.
That's really cool. And speaking of screens, there was another thing that I think you put it in your nose, actually, but It's certainly effective. We always have in these Benoit Blanc mysteries, there's always a moment where he's sitting by the fireside. I think it's one of those where I saw it in Knives Out. I saw it when he was obviously watching the Mona Lisa burn in in Glass Onion, and then in this one, there's another one. You've got a way with doing those with screens and how they reflect in people's faces. Do you want to talk me through that one?
That's right. Yeah.
Really
Yeah. So that
cool
that
sound
was
design.
that was another thing that we were doing with this system was we have some stuff where you can see fire and some other things reflected in people's eyes or eyeglasses. And so we had the lighting department actually had a few monitors, like so they weren't like the video monitors for viewing, they were actually lighting monitors. And from my system, I could send the image. And if it was a still image, I could actually send it wirelessly. If it was video, we did have to have a wire going from my system to the um, to the monitor for it to play back smoothly. So with the fire, we had shot fire at 200 frames a second to create this element where it's a little unreal because it's fire that's actually going crazy, but it feels roiling because it was shot at 200 frames. And so we play that back, and we're using the shot footage to create the shape only. So it's basically luminance only. And then the color, I'm dialing it in. So I can dial I mean, I can also adjust the overall luminance, but we're getting the shape, the luminance shape of the fire, like where is it bright versus where is it dark from the photography. And then I can change the overall luminance and I can change the actual color of it. Because if you were to use the color from the photography, that actually wouldn't be right for fire because well, firstly, it's color rendered instead of being the original fire, but more importantly, when you shoot fire, a lot of it blows out and you get white stuff. So it's
Yeah.
not actually fire color. There's like sometimes it's only fire color at the edges, and then the middle is white hot, and it comes out white. So if you were to actually use the color from the photography, you'd be losing some of the warmth of it. So we just use the luminance from the contrast from the photography, and then we set the luminance and the chroma on set the same as we would with a movie light, except it's a monitor.
That's amazing. And it plays in people's faces and on the glasses as well. That's so
Yeah, so
cool.
so we only did it when you could see it. When it was
Yeah.
farther back, we would just do it with regular movie light. I mean, I was still controlling it, but we wouldn't do it with a monitor. We would do it with
Mhm.
regular movie lights because when you're farther back, you see that something's flickering in their eye, but you can't see the shape of it.
Yeah.
So when we were in really close, we would do it with the monitor so that you could see it reflected. Um,
That's
you
genius.
know, yeah, like we also had a scene where uh, or a shot of it's a shot of Vera in the church in the denouement at the end, and there was like I don't remember the details of what was going on, but there was this combination of where everybody was around her, where the windows were in the movie, so it's got to at least be lit from that side, even if it's
Yeah.
not lit from exactly where the real window is. And then like her hair was kind of like or kind of she had a little bit of a hair tunnel where
Mhm.
you can't light her from too far from the side. And on top of all of these other things that were going on, she had these big glasses on,
Yeah.
and so I just quickly took an iPhone photo of no, it wasn't an iPhone photo. I just grabbed from the art one of the art department plans of the windows, and I just put that in my system so that I had one of the actual windows from the church. We
That's
put that on the monitor and we lit her with the monitor so that you see the reflection of the church
that's
window
brilliant.
in her glasses.
That's such a brilliant technique. And I can't believe other people have thought of it. It's great.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the thing is, I think I don't think it's that people haven't thought of it. I think that there's not. It's only now that there's a very quick, easy way to do it.
yeah.
It's not the idea of it; it's the how do you actually achieve it. That's
Yeah.
like we did stuff like that on Knives Out, but not with monitors. We did it with arts and crafts, where we would take the diffusion on the front of a light and put tape on it or something to make it the shape of the thing that was supposed to be reflected. Obviously, you couldn't do that with fire, but you could do that with a window,
Yeah.
because a window's not moving. So you could have done that another way, but this one was faster and easier because we've already got the monitor. We already have the image of the window. I can just put it in the system and send that to the monitor.
Love that. Speaking of Windows, actually, my final thing that I was going to ask, which was really cool, was the way that you shot the flashbacks, and it was like through this. we had this kind of like a red and blue sort of stained glass, and then it was almost black and white flashback
Mhm.
in the middle of it. You want to talk me through that because that was such a really cool technique, and I
Yeah, that was something that, yeah, that was just something Ryan came up with in prep. I don't remember what led him to it. I think we were showing him. I can't remember what it was. I think we were showing him some stuff that the art department had with the whatever, but it's just colored perspex, which
Mhm.
is perspex or plexiglass, UK versus American name for it, but yeah, it's just regular, not film industry stuff, just regular colored perspex. And, so he wanted to do this thing where, it's covering parts of the frame. They're usually red and blue, but
Yeah.
sometimes there's a green one or whatever. And it's kind of, the idea is it's flashback, kind of like you're looking through a stained glass window. And so for most of the flashback shots, and there's uh, basically there's some of this same flashback. You kind of see it once where it's more through a narrator, and once where it's more sort of what actually happened.
Yeah.
And it's the narrator ones that have this sort of unrealistic memory aspect to them. And then one thing that we did was there were a few shots where we couldn't have the perspex because it was like it's a big wide shot and we're also dollying over or whatever. And so there were a couple of those shots where this actually wasn't planned. I came up with it when we were shooting them. I said to Ryan, what if I make it out the windows, I make it out there a totally unrealistic color that's instead of the perspex. So there's one of the shots where out the window, it's this crazy blue color that's not a night blue. It's not any color that you would use for like nighttime blue out there. It just looks like a crazy primary blue. And
Yeah.
then there's another one where it's just completely red out the window. you
Yeah.
So and those were specifically um, flashback shots that didn't have the perspex in them, then had those the rhyming colors brought in through the windows.
I mean, one of the things that also struck me with this film as well was like, when with the camera movement, you're obviously having to. There's moments where Glenn Close is suddenly appearing behind somebody's back when she's introduced as character stuff like this,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
it's humorous as well. But it's one of
Mhm,
those where I always wonder, like, how much you've talked about you and Ryan designing shots and stuff like that.
mhm,
Seems to be the thing that you do rather than looking at sort of references. You'll look more
mhm,
at shot design and how you're going to do it and stuff like that. So how long are you spending on that in terms of working on what? There's one is working on a walkthrough of all the characters and stuff. There's one where they're all stood outside of Wix's mausoleum, I'll call it, or whatever you want to call it, his grave, and you move through all of the different characters, so we get introduced to all of them, see exactly who they are. Same thing happens, I think, when they're in the priest's house and stuff like that. We move
yeah.
around them all and stuff like that. So how long are you spending designing that and working out exactly where the camera's going to go to reveal this character
Mhm.
and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, depending on which one it is, some of those are, Ryan always has a shot list and an exact plan. So
Mhm.
some of them are literally is the exact plan, and we're just figuring out the best way to execute it. But some of them, although he does have a plan, it either has a little less precision or it's a little more um, malleable based on blocking. In which case there's a little more figuring it out, and figuring out not just how to do it, but exactly what what does that plan look like now in more concrete as opposed to abstract.
I get you.
And for the most part, the scenes that were most where his shot list is more of a abstract guide, and we're figuring out the details, tend to be the scenes where, like in the rectory, when you have 8 people sitting in a circle and nobody's moving much, but you have a lot of characters and 8 pages of dialogue or something like that.
Sounds
Those are
formidable.
yeah, those are ones where we tend to do it more, again, not that he doesn't have a plan, but the turning the plan into a reality is much more where the exact shot specifics come in.
Yeah.
Whereas things that are more sort of like, action based single person type stuff are going to be much more. This is exactly like he had such a literal thing, and we're just figuring out the best, most powerful way to execute the thing. And there's no sort of, but there's no figuring out what that thing is. It's just figuring out the best way to execute it.
And are you blocking on the day, or is that like for things like that, or is that something that you've got super planned out in advance?
We always block on the day. So Ryan always has. So he comes in with an idea of what he wants the blocking to be. It's not like finding it from scratch. I mean,
Yeah,
he always. I mean, that's a huge part of his planning.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean that he's moving the actors around like puppets. I mean, it's a very collaborative thing where he might say, well, this is what I was thinking. Let's see how it feels, and usually because the sort of the crux or important part of his shot design, isn't inflexible.
okay,
The sort of there's some sort of superficial details that don't matter to the what's essential about it.
yeah,
So a lot of times, even if the blocking does change, a lot of times it doesn't change from what he was thinking.
mhm,
But even if it does change, or even just if there's some specifics that he hadn't anticipated, right? Like it might even be it didn't change, but there's
yeah,
just some. Now we're in the real world instead of a piece of paper, and there's just some specifics that weren't anticipated. That still doesn't usually change the shot,
okay.
because the shot already was flexible enough to accommodate these, sort of what was specific and essential about it didn't include these superficial things that have now changed.
And presumably, when you're shooting in Britain, there's enough challenges in itself, right? With all the changing weather patterns and everything like that. When you're shooting Epping Forest, I don't imagine it's
Yeah.
the easiest place
we,
to shoot.
we did have some stuff like that, but um we did so well. Obviously, there's a ton of interiors which are all on stage,
Yeah.
and then we have a lot
Did
of
you
night
shoot those
stuff.
over there, or did you shoot some over here?
It was all in London. The
Okay,
only
leaves it.
stuff that was yeah, the only stuff that was in the States at all was some like sort of second unit and additional photography, like of the town and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But yeah, so we had so much, like so much of it was interiors where, all the scenes where the interiors are very much interacting with the exterior, where you're
Mhm.
feeling that weather stuff. That's all us doing that on a studio, and we're making the weather. We're not waiting for it. And then we have obviously lots of night stuff where, it's not going to go sunny to overcast. It doesn't mean anything at night. So obviously there is a bunch of day stuff, but it was limited. We did have some of those issues. The scene where Samson's whitewashing the tomb. There's actually, I mean, you can see it on cuts. It actually pops from sunny to overcast, and
Yeah.
we just had to color correct it to kind of all be the same overall color balance and brightness, and hopefully it's not distracting. But all of the scenes that were much more, that's not a big lighting scene, but we have all these other scenes that are, that really call for very specific evocative stuff. Like we have things that are supposed to be dusky that weren't shot at dusk and things like that. So a lot of that was done in conjunction with our first assistant director and the scheduling to make sure that if this, because there might be a long-ish, not super long, but long-ish scene that's supposed to be at dusk, and uh, even if we can do a shot at dusk, we can't shoot the whole scene at dusk. So when are we going to shoot this? So we would schedule it where, for example, when we are in the forest, we know at some point the sun hasn't set, but there's like at this specific spot where we're shooting, the trees are really thick there, and we know at what time, even if it's not overcast, we're not going to be getting sprayed with sunlight. And
Yeah.
so a lot of it was the combo of scheduling
Gotcha.
with him knowing those things, but then also being agile. Like if we thought something was going to happen and something changed, then we say, "Hey, can we flip these two scenes because now it's more important to do that one later in the day or whatever."
Yeah. It always feels like people go to Britain for Gothic nowadays. We've got Robert Eggers and Jerry Blaschke going to do Werewolf. You know what I mean? And I think that Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro was shot in Glasgow, so it feels like Britain's the kind of the Gothic center right now. I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
shoot some Gothic horror, then let's go to Britain. You know?
Yeah.
Steve, we're getting close to the end, obviously. one thing that I wanted to actually get back to, because I know you mentioned it, was the backdrops and these
Mm.
spectacle. So I want to definitely bring that in before we finish the interview.
Yeah.
We can talk about that now, but then I want to talk about your vision for the future after this, and like, what you're going to be doing technically. So let's talk about
Mm.
the backdrop first of all. So
Yeah.
tell me, because you referenced it, and I made note of it to make sure I didn't forget
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
spectacular backdrops. Please
No, thank
enlighten
you.
me.
Yeah, no, I mean, this was so exciting to me. So, I worked with the art department and especially the supervising art director, Dean Clegg, to kind of figure out all the logistics of this. But I really wanted these two stage backdrops where there's, trees and then behind it a sky. And that way I could light them separately. So, like, for example, if we're at night, I can turn the lights off on the trees so that they're silhouette and put like a deep blue on the sky. So it's silhouette trees against the deep blue. Or if it's, if it's just bright and sunny out, I can just blast all of it with light until it's almost blown out, like where you can just barely still see the texture. Or, if it's overcast or dusk or something like that, I can front light the trees dim so that you can see them, but they feel murky, and then light the sky to where it's, not dim like night, but where it's thicker and more textured than the blazing hot day. So we could sort of do all of these, different versions, and, so the dean and the whole art department, I mean, they were very supportive already, but we shot an early test of it, like, where they just did, like, a kind of a 20-foot thing of it instead of the whole stage, and then when they saw what it was, they're like, "Oh, yeah, okay, this is really exciting."
That's cool.
And, it was just such a, like, great way to do it because it was so fun. We're just like all of the light on the faces and everything. I could dial in the exact look and feel out there, you know, and, it was also just amazing to see the artistry of, the scenic painter was this guy, Steve Mitchell, who's been doing it for a long time, and just to see the artistry is mind blowing. Like the sky that he painted, if because you never really see just the sky, you see kind of the combo of the front and the back, and it's out the window. But like when you're standing on the stage and you see it, it looks photo real, and it's not like a flat sky. It's perspective where it feels like the ceiling of clouds receding, into the
Oh,
distance
that's
towards
cool.
the horizon, and he just paints this stuff freehand. And we could give him notes, like, he could paint it once, and then you say, can you scale it up a little, and also, can you make it a little more contrasty?" I wanted it to be as contrasty as it could because in the scenes where it's blown out, if I flood it with light, you won't even see that it's contrasty because it's almost blown out, and then in the darker scenes, I can bring that contrast back in, and he would just repaint the whole giant thing in, like, a couple days, and then, I don't remember how
That's
long it took him, but it
unbelievable.
was, like, ridiculously fast, and I just don't know how the guy do and he did all of the backing. We had backings in, the rectory and the police station, and, he did all of that stuff, but obviously kind of the star of the show was the big church set, so
Outside the church, yeah. I mean, I suppose that during a time where LED panels are being used, like the volumes being used pretty routinely now, you know what I mean? To have something that was hand painted like that and going back, harking back to the old days, as we put it, the old days. You know what I mean? I suppose that was quite heartening, right? Yeah. So, Steve, let's talk now. Moving on to like yourself and looking beyond Wake Up Dead Man and everything. Sort of what technical or artistic aspects of cinematography are you currently exploring to sort of develop the genre further? I know that you're really focusing on all these different technical ideas, but talk me through and what are you looking at, and that can help advance cinematography in general, really.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I'm working on right now is this, sort of light control product that I mentioned, which is still a little ways off, but we're hoping it's gonna be closer, and it's really, um, it's kinda meant to be something instead of dimmer board console software,
Mhm.
but it's not itself dimmer board. It's it's something that where, um, cinema instead of concerts are the main
Yeah.
idea of it, and also all of the contemporary stuff such as high pixel density lighting and, LED lights and other technologies where you can control the color. Um, all of these things are built into the fabric of it, rather than the thing was built before those existed, and now it's kind of been, you know, plopped on top.
Yeah.
It's kind of right at the core of it, and also for very complex, like, timeline-based queuing, and, also, um, productions where there's, you know, tens or hundreds of thousands or even millions of control channels, and just sort of just all of these things in one, and, really it's all born out of the fact that this is how I wanna do it, and
Yeah.
unlike some of my other personal tools, this one felt like something that could be good for a lot of people, not just my weird idiosyncrasies, because it really does feel like how it should be done, and, another example of that is, that, one of the things with this light control method is it can make dumb lights into smart lights. I mean, we have to have a data set on the lights. It can't just magically do it. But, so, we have all these different brands of movie lights where you can control the exact chromaticity. Like, you can give it not just a color temperature, but you can give it an exact, color science
That's
chromaticity,
cool.
and it'll make that light. So a lot of the movie lights already do that. But, a lot of times we're not using movie lights. We're using, like, generic LED ribbon
Yeah.
or something, which doesn't have, not only does it not have that color engine in it, it doesn't have any color engine in it. The controller literally just, if it's got red, green, blue, and 5 whites, you can just turn them up and down separately.
Yeah.
So this is a way to, turn those into where it's interchangeable. You could use those cheap LED ribbon interchangeably with the fancy movie light and still get the exact same color that you want,
That's cool.
and the best blend of that color that's got the broadest spectrum and the brightest white.
Yeah.
And we actually use that on Wake Up Dead Man because, the in the that main church set, the
Yeah.
whole ceiling of it had, like, soft boxes covering the entire ceiling. And that set had to be standing from the beginning of production to the end because of actors' schedules and some other
Mm.
reasons. It's not like it was just at the beginning and then we're tearing it down. And what that allowed us to do was to build those soft boxes out of cheap LED ribbon, but still have the full, not just in, luminance control, but color control. And then that way we're not renting movie lights that are sitting there for, you know, weeks upon weeks, which would be incredibly expensive, but we still have the full control over it, which, in the recent past, obviously in the distant past, this stuff didn't even exist, but
Yeah.
in the recent past, what probably would have happened is, well, almost certainly would have happened is they would have used bicolor ribbon instead of the full color control ribbon, just because there's no good color control method.
Mhm.
And then you would be stuck with bicolor. You're just stuck on a crossfade between warm and cool. You can't make it any precise color that you want, like dialing in green versus magenta, and, all of that. So this gave us the absolute full color control and not having to rent the movie lights, and also makes them lighter soft boxes because it's just got ribbon in it instead of
Yeah.
big heavy movie lights.
I bet production loved you as well. You didn't have to you didn't have to pull them for those fortune in lights. Yeah. Steve, what's I always try and do this because obviously a lot of our audience is upcoming young DPs and a lot of people from like AFI and things like that, film students who are wanting to learn about cinematography or certainly wanting to hone the craft of cinematography. You as an established DP who's made some of the most, wonderful films and captured some of the wonderful images. I mean, honestly, that I have to say before we go, the throne moon scene from
Uh,
Last Jedi is one of my favorites in all of cinema. I wanted to put it
Thank
on my
you.
wall, but I am going to get like you're losing out to Jaws right now. Um, but yeah. So as this established DP and as somebody who's made some wonderful images, what piece of advice would you give to upcoming DPs in this new age? We've got streaming, we've got all these new techs that are all coming out and things like that. What's your advice to them? I know it's putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I mean, I'm mostly just really lucky because I met Ryan when I was 17 or 18 years old. So that's not something you can plan. But I mean, the thing I will say is, I think just keeping the love and curiosity of cinema and bringing yourself to it. What do you love? Because I think sometimes when people are trying to get going and there's that frustration of it's not happening, is there's almost this sort of wanting to sell out when nobody's asking you to. Like, how can I make myself exactly what people want? And the problem is that that's just making you interchangeable. I mean, if you're kind of true to what makes you passionate about it, even if that's idiosyncratic and weird, that's that is your selling point because if you're trying to have a job that is creative and unique, there does need to be something specific about you that's not an interchangeable cog. So just staying true to your vision and passion for what gets you excited about cinema.
I really like that. That's a really cool one. And I suppose I'm going on to other. That should have been a closing question, but I'm intrigued as to what your opinion is on AI. Since you're such a person who's involved in technology and technological advancement and stuff like that, is AI something that's scary to you, or is it something that we should harness? As creatives and see how it can be used? Because I know that right now, I mean, so I've got friends who are working at the AFI right now. They're actually being proposition by studios to see how AI can be used in the creative pipeline. It's something that a lot of people are quite scared about, the frightened of talking about. What about yourself? What's your thought process on it?
I really don't know. I think anybody that's confidently prognosticating is full of hot air. So I really don't know. I mean, the one thing I will say is AI is very much a buzzword, and if we're talking about specifically large language model, which is the type of AI that's what that people are usually talking about, um, I I don't think it's accelerating the way people think it is. I mean, it's basically a fuzzy search engine. It's a blurry lookup basically, and so people think it's amazing when you ask it to do a mashup. You're like, "Oh my god, look how incredible this is!" And you're like, "Yeah, because it's a mashup machine. Of course, it can do a mashup." I think it's kind of a thing where it accelerated so fast and people tend to project um, future things on a linear scale, but it's never there's always an S curve with anything that's sort of and I feel like it's going to accelerate and taper off and this version of it I can't see being much more than it is of a fuzzy lookup that helps with certain things and hinders other things and it's just a lookup tool, really, to an extent. Now, other kinds of AI and machine learning that aren't large language model, I have no idea. But in terms of this specific thing, again, I'm not confidently prognosticating, but I'm saying I feel like it's just gonna continue to be what it is, which is a mashup machine. And in some ways, not only is it not gonna get better, it's gonna get worse because as it continues to be a mashup of existing stuff, when it started, there wasn't any AI generated things for it to mash up. Now it's a feedback loop where in the world is AI stuff for it to mash up too, which is really going to slow it down. So I don't know, but that's
It fascinates me just purely because like there's people I know right now. Lionsgate have got like I don't know a group of people who are working on putting their whole catalog into this sort of AI runway, whatever you want to call it, and using it to generate things like storyboards. They've said to me like that they're using it to generate, and I was like, well, surely that's part of the creative process. Surely that's like yourself and Ryan sitting down and designing the storyboard, or designing, sitting with a storyboard artist and talking through the shots and the moves that you want to do. And that's something that's kind of it's a bit freaky, really, in that respect. I don't know if Netflix is planning on doing anything of the same kind of ilk. But one of the things that I'm actually quite enjoying about Netflix right now, and it's something that I'm hoping that you guys are going to do for Wake Up Dead Man. They did a wonderful thing with Guillermo del Toro on Frankenstein, where him and Dan Laustsen talked about color, the color that they were using and the different ways in which they used shots and the way that, and it's brilliant. It's kind of like having the old DVDs with a VTS.
so like the DVD extras, yeah.
It felt
Oh,
like
that's
that, and I wonder if they're gonna do that for Wake Up Dead Man, because it is something that's actually drawing me back to Netflix, I suppose, where I
wow.
can watch a film
I
and watch the making of, you know what I mean?
Wow. I don't know if they are, but I want to watch that Frankenstein one because that's a beautiful movie.
It's
So
phenomenal. It's brilliant because he
So it's on. I'm gonna watch this. It's on Netflix.
it's
This
on Netflix.
this guy. The this.
Yes.
But How do you turn on the commentary though?
It's no, there's a different video.
Oh,
So
it's a different movie. Like
yeah,
you
it's
flip
not
it
like it's
or
not like what was it, The Dark Knight, where Nolan does a shot by shot how we did each shot, but
okay,
it's
okay.
sort of like a
It's not a
45-minute.
okay, it's not a director's commentary, it's a separate movie
Sadly,
section.
no, and I wish there was a
Yeah,
director's
that's
commentary
that's
because I
just
miss those.
yeah.
But yeah, I'd give it a watch because it's 45 minutes and he talks about how it, how the color starts off black, white, and red, and then how it develops and stuff like that. It's really, really
Okay.
cleverly done. And I
Yeah,
thought,
I'm gonna watch
give
that.
it a
That sounds
watch.
awesome. That movie's just mind-blowingly beautiful.
Yeah, and if you've got any sway at Netflix, you and should definitely do one for this film
Yeah,
because
I don't know if I can cause that to happen. Ryan might be able to, but I certainly can't. So.
honestly, Steve, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, and you've given us so many things. I mean, inevitably, this is going to get chopped down into certain sound bites and things like that. But I really hope that people get a chance to listen to this whole thing because, yeah, you can tell that your passion for this genre is fantastic. And honestly, I really look forward to everything you do. As I said, I've been a fan since Looper. I went back and saw Brick after seeing Looper, and then the rest of the ones I've seen since. So I'm a real big fan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. Thank you.